Hello everybody. Hey everybody, this is Jane. I'm here to lead you through my first virtual blog, which is a still life, a lesson in still life. So first we're going to be learning a little bit more about still life and all the different kinds of still life. Second, I'm going to tell you a bit of an art history lesson while also showing a video of me making my own still life. And then, we're just going to go from there. So without further ado, what is a still life? A still life is simply a painting or a drawing of objects. It is different from other forms of figurative work in the sense that it cannot move, unlike a figure or a portrait. And it's close to you, unlike a landscape, which we normally draw from afar. When you paint or draw a still life, we'll be drawing it today, but if you have paint at home, I encourage you to use it. When you paint or draw a still life, you will see things your own way. One person might be fascinated to the detail, just like here, maybe they'd be fascinated with including the shadow from my floating plant. And you see the little detail of the shadow too. Another person might be really interested in the shape, so maybe they'd focus on this kind of strange roof kind of shape and maybe focus from there in the background, including that nice clothing folds and whatnot. And another person might be more interested in the colors, so maybe they are really interested in how these greens are working together and maybe just focusing more so on that. Alright, there are two different types of still lives. One of them is just using natural things like food and fruit and branches and anything you can find outside, but that was made naturally. So that's a really traditional kind of one. And then the second is sometimes they are paintings or drawings of groups of objects made by people. So for example, maybe someone wants to draw their cooking pots, some bottles, maybe some clothing that's really special to them, or household objects. Like myself, I chose to go with the second option, which was this. So I included something I made a long time ago, but is really dear to me. And then I got this as a gift, so it's very important to include that. And then my paintbrush that I always use. So that's what the three objects I chose for my still life, which you guys will also be doing the same. You'll be grabbing three. So there are many artists throughout the years that have created still life. They were very popular as a subject for artwork in the 17th century, so we're kind of going back to the 17th century today. We can look at old still life pictures and see a bit of history in the works. So I can show you pictures from Georgia O'Keeffe, all those different kinds of people, and Vincent van Gogh. They were all into still lives. So in order to make a still life, an artist has to set up a still life group before they draw or paint it. They have to make it look interesting. They might put them on a bench or a table and then include this in the drawing or painting, so maybe they're putting it on a couch or something. They might put a cloth or a wall behind the objects to connect them together. So as you can see, I used a black cloth to put behind my my still life so I can have a good launching off point and nothing in the background kind of distracting me. And it's so important to group your objects together, because a still life doesn't look as good if all the objects are like kind of all far apart. And that's when the challenge comes in, is how are you going to overlap them? Alright, so that's my challenge for you guys today. Don't worry, I'll be doing it at the same time. But I want you guys to first decide what kind of still life you're going to do. A natural one or one with objects from your home. And then the next step is you're going to choose three of those things. And then you're going to make sure you set it up on a flat, good background where you can see everything clearly. Okay? And after you have your objects set out and your whole thing set out, I'll meet you there for the next step. Hello everybody. I hope you guys have your still life in front of you like I do, and a pencil and some coloring utensils so you guys can get ready and start your still life. Maybe choose the easiest spot you think you would start from, or a texture you're interested in drawing, and start from there. But other than that, I'm going to start my drawing on the other screen. And I'm going to also, at the same time, tell you guys a little bit more about the history of still life, okay? Ready? Let's start your still life. Still life is the art of drawing or painting inanimate objects such as fruit, flowers, and household items, which are usually arranged on a table or a shelf. Artists create still life paintings for various reasons: to reflect the status of their owner, be it humble or hoity, for their symbolic meaning, which reveals a hidden story or idea, to capture the transient beauty of natural objects like flowers or fruit, or as a controlled structure to express the abstract qualities of the visual elements. So just drawing what was around you. So still life art has existed in one form or another since the time of ancient Romans and Greeks. Although there are examples of ancient Roman still life, mostly in the form of mosaics and interior decoration that was preserved when Mount Vesuvius erupted in 79 AD, there are no examples from ancient Greece. There is, however, a story from around this time in the book Historia Naturalis, the only surviving history of ancient art, by the Roman writer Pliny. I don't know if you've heard of him, but he's got a lot of different writings out there. He lived in around 23-29 AD. So this book, it tells us about a competition that took place about 400 BC between two Greek painters, Zeuxis and Parrhasius. Zeuxis created a painting of grapes which were so convincing that birds flew down and tried to peck at them. In art, this kind of realistic painting is called a trick of the eye. Envious of his fellow artists' display of skill, Parrhasius painted a trick of the eye image of a curtain, which appeared to conceal a painting about the Trojan War beneath it. On seeing his friend's work, Zeuxis asked Parrhasius to pull back the curtain to reveal the rest of the painting. At that moment, Parrhasius claimed victory. Although Zeuxis had fooled the birds with his still life of grapes, Parrhasius had succeeded in fooling a fellow artist, an altogether more difficult task. Since the earliest times, still life has always been a subject that artists have shown to show off their technical skills in painting. So I think that story is pretty cool, and I will show you a bit more of my drawing on the other screen. But I think it kind of reminds us of how long art has been going on for, since we've been here, right? Okay. Before the 17th century, still life was usually limited to the background detail of religious figurative art. So it was like usually the religious person is in front, the other still life details are in the back. Pushed to the end, usually with some symbolic significance if you could see it. In Carlo Crivelli's painting, which I'll show you, the apples and fly represent temptation and corruption, while the cucumber is seen as the antidote to these, as it is a symbol of redemption. Remember, the cucumber is a symbol of redemption. Many fruits had meanings that now seem rather strange. For example, the cherry symbolized heaven. It was known as the fruit of paradise. And the pomegranate symbolized Christ's resurrection. Some pretty religious stuff. This is because in Greek mythology, the pomegranate was associated with Persephone, who returned to the earth every year from the underworld, symbolizing the way in which spring brings new life after winter. Wow, so I don't know, that was pretty hard to follow along with, but it was just talking about how, as long as we can remember, different fruit has symbolized different things, and usually you'll find a lot of fruit in still lifes. As a subject in its own right, still life painting was generally considered to be a lower form of art. This was in the Renaissance and post-impressionist time. Some painters had achieved great skill in the realistic representation of objects, but it was not elevated to the status of a major art form until the work of Chardin emerged in the 18th century, followed by Cézanne in the 19th century and the abstract style of Cubism in the 20th century. So it was put to the bottom of the barrel once new fancier kind of art came out, but no one can really forget the importance that still life has had on our humankind. So there's still a lot of examples of still lifes that happen in more modern art. Just think of Andy Warhol's can of soup. That's an example of a still life. He might not have had it in front of him, but it's just showing us an object. Maybe brainstorm some paintings or famous drawings you've seen that used what we're using today as a form of art and as a form of expressing yourself through objects. So during this still life, if I've been able to get you started with that little history lesson, just try to think while you're doing these of the old-timey people who used to do these too. They didn't know where to start with their still life either. Maybe they started on the fruit. Maybe they started on the roof of the little house. Anyway, that is my still life lesson for today. I can't wait to see during our Zoom chats or Zoom activities or when we come back to Prospect. I'd love to see your guys' still lives, so keep them around. All right, well, have a wonderful day, and I will see you later on my next vlog.